All right, wonderful. We're going to kick off today with what reopening means for businesses. This is our weekly coffee and compliance. So everyone, welcome. Happy Tuesday. Super excited to have you here and super excited to have Todd Ravazza with Clark Pacific. We bring in a lot of different thought leaders and regulators within the industry to talk about emerging trends, career perspectives, and just really what's happening within the industry to give you folks out there a context and hopefully a learning opportunity. So we're really excited to dive in today. Just to provide a little bit more context for some of you who may be new to Mapistry, well, I suppose I should introduce myself. My name's Sarah. I'm a communication specialist with Mapistry. And so I really enjoy speaking with all these different people, hopefully capturing their stories and presenting it in a way that is beneficial to you all. Mapistry, the next exciting thing, is really a software company that works with industrial compliance. We try to capture the different aspects that are needed to have a holistic EHS program, including transparency, collaboration, efficiency, and accountability. Those are our primary pillars, which we hope to connect as a software to various companies within the industry. And we're a platform to drive decision making. So we help companies make intelligent decisions around environmental health and safety, and hopefully connect the dots and communicate that throughout their teams. If you want to learn more, happy to discuss after the webinar. That's to provide a bit of context for where we fit in the niche of building materials industry and other manufacturing companies out there. So there's some context, and today we're going to be bringing on Todd Ravazza. Todd is the Director of EHS at Clark Pacific, and we're hopefully going to chat a little bit about his career thus far and this last year and a half with the health and safety perspective. And I'm really excited to have you here, Todd, so thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, always a pleasure to speak with you. I don't want to do the introducing for you. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your career in the industry and give us a little context there?
Sure, of course. So as Sarah mentioned, my name is Todd Ravazza. This is well, I'm dating myself as my beard doesn't do that for me. My 26th year, I celebrate this month actually in the EHS profession. I've been in heavy manufacturing or heavy construction 95% of that time. I spent a couple years in commercial construction. I began in chemical manufacturing. I found a knack in the hazmat world, and back in the 90s, when people asking me, well, aren't you afraid you're going to go home green? I'm like, no, you got to understand what you're doing, how to deal with it, right? How to safely manage the materials you work with. Found a passion for that particular scientific and technical aspect of the profession, and that evolved and grew pretty quickly, actually, over the next 5 or 6 years to becoming a full practitioner of environmental health and safety, and incorporating the environmental and the health and safety and more of a holistic approach to supporting the organizations that I've had the opportunity and the privilege to have worked with. Here at Clark Pacific, I will say that I feel very honored and privileged, and I do consider this. I've been on a couple very, very top-notch teams, and I would say that Clark Pacific has a best-in-class team. And I hope that's not just prejudiced opinion, being Director of EHS here, but I truly feel that in getting to know this team of folks here. There's just some really good folks, and take us to a new level as we work on even a more in-depth approach and how we holistically approach our EHS and even broader risk management scheme to improve our performance, both personally and financially. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Thanks for the context. Yeah, I mean, it's important to have new leaders circulating through, I think, especially in industries as old as building materials and whatnot. So it's super important to have that energy and that new perspective. We've had the opportunity to speak with you a couple times over the years. I think the last was on our virtual EHS summit back in September of 2020, which seems like so long ago. You were able to share some wisdom on the best practices for this rapidly changing environment, and you really emphasized the importance of prevention, which totally can get on board with. Would you be able to share some tips on how you're able to stay current with the best practices for health and safety with COVID, in the context of all this changing atmosphere all the time?
Yeah, of course. There's a couple aspects. There's the regulatory aspect, and there is the cultural aspect, right? Our performance aspect. But the regulatory aspect is actually not all that difficult, although it can be vague at times. Dealing with staying up to date with proposed changes, regulatory changes, adopted changes, timelines, what those details are. And I'll quickly sidebar on this. Being in heavy chemical manufacturing for 12 of my years that I've been doing this, I've dealt with process safety management, California Accidental Release Program, risk management plan, all these high-level programs that are very complex and in-depth. I will say that the COVID regulations, at least here in California, were as complex and dynamic as maybe not as in-depth, and it didn't reach as many different layers, but how we had to manage it was definitely as complex as anything else I've ever dealt with in my career. So staying up to date with those changes lately, at least here in the state, it has been very fluid, and there's a lot of activity, which is not normal. We don't see a lot of activity in short periods of time when it comes to regulatory changes. And we are seeing that today. So it is more precedent setting as we continue to evolve through the COVID process. The other part of that is getting into the details and making sure that as we adjust to these regulatory changes and guidelines, that we are adjusting our programs and then our expectations, and then who those people affect. The other part of that is working through professional associations. So there are a number of associations that, whether they're national or specific to local areas or specific industries, working with these associations and being a participant, an active participant, especially the ones that have been collecting voices and collecting information to feedback to the regulators, so that they can get public comment, especially when they're getting them from a broad, different sectors, industry sectors, from a broad perspective within those. So that's been very helpful as well. From a cultural perspective, there's been a pretty constant recreation and re-energization of how we manage health and safety initiatives. Mm-hmm. Again, here we are in a different era, and we're always asked to do more with less, right? How can we be more efficient? How can we raise the bar? Okay, we got it. We have to do that. We have to do that to be the best, to be successful. How do we do that now with even less resources? We have, some of it can be done remotely. Some of these different tasks can be done remotely. How do we pull and collaborate and pull those resources together so that we can make sure we're achieving our goals and objectives? In the past 16 months, at least my experience with this is that I've had to engage every level of leadership, from C-suite to frontline leaders, and even below frontline managers and supervisors to the crew leads. And me and my team have, we've had to engage at all levels and continue to collaborate. And sometimes, you run into speed bumps with that, because they have their normal job to do, right? They have to produce products. They have to get these products out the door. They have to get these products installed on job sites. All of these things that are paying the bills. So consistent, gentle pressure, I've found, has been very successful. And just keep herding the cats, right? That's kind of what we're doing. We just keep getting our arms out there and lassoing people in. And for the most part, we haven't had a lot of resistance, but sure, it's important because. Yeah,
go ahead. No.
No. Keep going, Sarah.
One of the challenges that we face is this inner disconnect with the technology, which obviously is part of how you communicate with people in this setting. I was going to ask, how do you really create that health and safety culture that's forward thinking? I mean, we can do it in real time, but how do you establish that as the new norm? And obviously, you talk about like repetitive activities and herding cats, but have you kind of found a sweet spot of trying to get it forward thinking in terms of pandemic preparedness?
Um, it, so it's a really good question, and I'm going to pause just briefly enough to put this thought together because I had a different line of thought on that. Um, I don't, from my perspective, it truly is a holistic thing.
Yeah.
If we're, when it comes back, and I'll go back to 2020 on prevention and preparedness,
Mhm.
if as a health and safety or an environmental health and safety leader, I'm forward thinking and looking ahead. I need to look ahead a year, 2 years, 5 years, look at where at least we believe we're going to be. What are our goals and objectives as an organization? Now I can pull that focus in on how does the EHS department provide that support to the organization and the different facets of the organization. Because there's in this organization, there's a pretty broad approach with these different vertical groups that we work with. By taking the full holistic approach to preparedness and prevention, pandemic preparedness is just another subject matter. It's no different than lockout, tagout, or confined spaces, or fall protection, or hazardous waste management. It's all on how we set those goals to make sure that we're looking ahead, so that it's one of those projects we work on a continuous improvement cycle. This past 16 plus months has definitely changed it. It's raised the bar. It's made us raise the bar. It's pushed us out of comfort zones for sure in a lot of areas. I was one of those. I love the interpersonal interactions. I like getting with people and sitting across the table from each other and working together, and walking by the hall or the water cooler and having those interactions. All those little things interplay together and build that culture, right? And to get comfortable with doing this, I was not comfortable the first time I did it, and I've gotten comfortable with it now. I mean, even with organizing and facilitating high level meetings, we have to do it, right? So we get out of what we used to do, and now what do we do? Let's look forward. Let's set those goals, whatever
Mhm.
those projects are, because I look at those as all as different projects, and let's set the milestones. Let's set the milestones, and then we have work to do, because I can't read the future, but I would not be surprised to have another pandemic or similar situation that we have to address and be prepared for. So we're going to take what we learned this time. We're going to critique that and look at what we can do better, and then take the elements of the COVID prevention plan we developed and see what we can do to improve
It's complicated. You really got to break it apart, but it's fortunate they have, leaders like you to do that. And I'm sure it has challenged you out of your comfort zone. I mean, as you mentioned, like even the basic technology communication. Uh, do you think there are some identifiable challenges the industry as a whole has faced in the last 16 months of COVID? And if so, if those can be kind of categorized, how have they approached those challenges and worked towards them?
that. No, yes, there have been challenges, and I think we go back to doing more with less.
Yeah.
We've had to learn how to share resources, how to support each other, recreate roles, reassign responsibilities where people were, again, comfort zone stuff. People are used to their little niche and what they do, and they're really good at it. That's why they're in those roles. Now we're asking them to do that and to take on this little part, and to have their team members take on these other parts. And then it comes back to, well, what are those tasks? Making sure we're tracking those tasks as basically as action items. We want to track those, and we want to help and see where we're falling short, where we're succeeding. Use the energy in those successes to continue that energy and keep that traction uphill, and then take some of that and support where we're falling a little short, and find out why. find out if do we have the right people on the team. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we don't. We have the best intention, and we find out that person's better suited to handle this aspect, and this person, well, they're really good at that. They can also do so we're going to switch roles here. So that's really a challenge. It really is. I think another big challenge we've experienced that I don't live in fear, but I have concern longer term is when we have people call out because of COVID and we're mandated to keep people out of the workforce for 10 days. Now it was 14 days in the beginning of all this. For a small team, that could be decimating. That can devastate production. That could devastate project work and everything that goes along with it, the trickle effect that anybody in management can appreciate, and how we now reassess, stop our world, because we all have work to do, right? I have to stop what I'm doing. Now I have to get with these people and help them figure out, and they have to get with their peers to figure out how we can make it work. So it creates maybe a lesser opportunity for efficiency, but it builds resiliency as well. We start getting some cross-functional training in there. We find out maybe new strengths that we didn't see with other people because they were never asked to do things. So there's definitely lemonade that we're able to squeeze out of the lemon on this.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, what like a positive outcome of quite a challenging year. I mean, in terms of like the tools that you've been able to identify those strengths and kind of hone in on those, has technology been a big part of that? I mean, in what aspects have you guys embraced this digital age?
Excuse me. I mean, the basic communications.
Yeah.
We're a big teams organization, but I think at least I've seen it from peers and other professionals I know that whether it's Skype, Zoom, whatever platform people are using, we've come to rely more on. In fact, what we're doing, in Teams, for example, is we've really taken advantage of and leveraging the resources available. Before it was like, okay, we'd have a couple groups, we have some calendars, shared calendars, and we had video calls. Now we've got channels, we've got these different work areas that allow us to work remotely and still collaborate very effectively. Handheld tools, electronic tools, getting out in the plants and doing things to the best of our abilities with that. On the COVID side itself, we've gone, we did go, I think a lot of folks, at least here in the state of California, went to screening and scanning people for temperature coming in the gate or coming in the door. We have not employed this here yet. We are looking at it from a security aspect. This is so another cup of lemonade out of this is looking at facial recognition and thermal scanning, so that we can have, instead of having like maybe a security guard, if you will, they can do a temperature scan. They can say who they're here to see, and you've got this. I don't think it's technically artificial intelligence. It's kind of close though, to where they can then reach whoever their host person is. They check in when they pull in our facility here, the main gate, and then they would park, and then they would walk to where the meeting location is at the entrance to the building to meet their host. So there are some different technologies. We're looking at some others. This actually forced us into a different line of thinking, at looking at bionics to help with some of the hard labor. So it's something that, maybe would have been kind of discussed here and there, but we actually dove into like, let's think forward again. Let's think ahead. What are we doing? How can we improve how we're doing work and how we can take care of the people? The people that have been coming to these facilities throughout this entire pandemic have put in a lot of hard work to keep the boat afloat, basically. And it's just one of those things. We wouldn't expect to have gone through trial runs with bionic suits, and it's just like upper body suits for upper torso and arms to help them in their physical or their industrial ergonomics. So different things that we're looking at this point in time.
That's wild. I didn't realize that the future, I mean, the future seems like it's here now in terms of embracing technology. Has that, and this is just kind of a question am wondering about. But has that been embraced by the community in the workspace? I mean, I'm sure there's different opinions, but is that overall something that people are excited about?
I think conceptually, very much so.
Yeah.
Put practically, very limited. I mean, very limited from what I've seen. Now,
Mm.
there might be people out there watching this going, "Oh no, this is totally normal," and you know what? More power to them. We just
Yeah.
haven't got there yet. I mean, I've been hearing about the bionics for quite a while, for
Mm.
probably 8 or 10 years now, I'm guessing. And the technology is getting to a point where it's not cost prohibitive,
Mm.
and it's becoming more commonplace, at least as a consideration.
Very exciting. That's it's really interesting to hear. In terms of people embracing like different roles, is that another aspect that people are getting on board with in terms of like, yes, I want to have multiple roles. I want to wear many hats and that's exciting to me.
That's kind of an ironic question. Um, yes and no. I mean, you have your early adopters and you have your more resistant ones, but I can say that at least in my experience, even the ones that I've found to be more resistant over time have been less resistant to change, um, given the current circumstances.
Yeah,
There's always going to be some, some pushback here and there, whether it's direct or indirect or soft or hard, but um, the ability to adapt, I at least I'm feeling, and when I'm talking to people, just it's in society at large, is that we really have had no choice
yeah,
as a human race, at least in the United States, and I would have to think abroad, to embrace and adapt to change, because if not, I mean, it's kind of a deep rabbit hole to get into. So yeah.
sure. Sure. Which I mean opens up the floor for another question I'm curious about as we, get more people vaccinated and as people are able to start coming into the workplace. And I'm sure there's no set of rules for this, but how does that? What are the long-term effects of that in terms of how facilities operate, and just things opening up? Are there going to be any, in the future of after COVID? What are the long-term effects of how facilities operate?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I'll give my optimistic spin on that, and what I'm doing as a leader to help the Clark Pacific team is the work that we put in a lot of work even throughout this, in our overall EHS program. So we've taken the opportunity as things have slowed for a lot of people the past 16 months. I mean, some people it wasn't even a slow; it was a stop, uh, pretty short of a tape ejection. It's like, all right, hold on, we're stopping for a minute. Is we've taken that opportunity to really dive into our programs and look at the main cornerstones of those programs and review, revise those as needed, recommunicate those, reassign responsibilities as appropriate and as required in some cases, just out of sheer necessity. Um, my goal, and as an EHS professional, is to help our team lead the organization to better sustainability with all of those. So in doing so, the longer term impacts, my hope is, and this is my goal, and it's more of a personal thing. This isn't like on my glass board that I get to erase at some point, is that we will see that performance elevate. And when that performance elevates, we can then reassess, take the Deming cycle, right, and this continuous improvement cycle there, and we can look at it again. Okay, well, where are we falling short now? We can continue to go around in that loop, continuing to raise the bar each iteration. So I think as far as future pandemic goes, given that situation, I think I think all of us will be in a little bit, at least all of us that put any effort into this, will be in a little bit better shape on how we manage our business and how we help our people be successful, to help, and in turn helps the company be successful. Um, this was a learning curve for everybody, right? I mean, it has been an unprecedented time. I mean, they said that within the first couple of months. This is unprecedented. We heard that over and over and over. And that term hasn't been lost, at least not on me. Unprecedented is pretty significant, right? It's historic. And now we get, hopefully we don't have any more unprecedented situations. We can take that and we can build from it. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think you really covered the core question of this session, which is, what reopening means for businesses, from like a culture standpoint, from an actual process standpoint. From the regulator side, how does this renewed interest in health and safety oversight impact regulators and, leaders like you who are trying to piece it all together?
The only thing, at least in my experience, that has changed was maybe lack of physical presence at times. Definitely the first 8 or 9 months. I mean, like the air districts and the CUPAs, the hazmat regulators were not coming into businesses. They were, I mean, literally, I remember one air inspection, they're like, take a picture of your equipment, send me your records. Okay. Take a picture of the equipment, send them our maintenance records, our throughput records. They reviewed remotely and they got back to us. That started to open up maybe 6 months ago. We started to see a little more interactivity, a little more phone calls, and then, okay, we'd like to come visit. Okay, what's your protocol? And then they came, they followed their protocol, and which aligned with ours anyway, because we were all following California Department of Public Health and or CDC guidelines, so that made it level playing field for everybody and the expectations. And as far as OSHA goes, I haven't seen any in-person inspection. Actually, I did. Let me stand corrected. We had one at one facility in Southern California throughout this process. Hopefully other leaders have taken the opportunity to take a look at their programs and set themselves up for success and look at those, whoever is assigned specific responsibilities. Are we getting them done? Have we done a good job? Where can we improve so that when they do come back out, and we do expect to see an increase, I don't think it'll be a flurry of activity, but we'll see an increase back to normal. Their workload has only been backlogging, if you think about it. So I'm not worried about, hey, all of a sudden they're here to inspect all of our facilities and our job sites. But I don't foresee any real challenges, at least not from my perspective on that, unless there's an incident or event that would lead to something like that.
Got it. Makes sense. And overall, just like a bigger awareness, everyone really knows what's happening, obviously. So that could probably be a positive result out of that as well. I'm looking at the clock, we're approaching our few final minutes. And, I would love to address this final question, which is like the biggest lesson you've learned as a leader after this experience, and how you plan to take that lesson and move it forward.
I think setting our course has been super critical, because every minute is so valuable. Every hour that we spend on one task impacts another, or what does or does not get done. So I think setting our course effectively, making those micro adjustments as we need to. Hopefully there's no macro adjustments. If we do need to make macro adjustments, we need to kind of pull back, step outside the box, reassess, reevaluate, and make sure our targets are on. The collaboration, at least for me, and it's a wonderful growth experience. It really is, to be able to take my passion and energy, because I love what I do, and to be able to learn how to open my mind even further, right? How can I think differently? How can I receive a perspective even better than I did before? I hope I did okay before, but definitely I believe that collaboration, open-mindedness, constant communication, I mean, not killing people with communication, but clear, concise, consistent communication is probably the best way to put it, are all critical and remain critical. So hopefully that sharpened the knives for us.
Definitely. Thanks, Todd. That's awesome. Great. Well, we're going to wrap it up with those final words of wisdom. Appreciate your time, Todd. Next July, in July, it's going to be the whole next month. Couple weeks from now, we're going to be talking with MMC Materials about moving from paper to digital. A transition that was, moved the needle because of COVID. So we're going to be chatting about that. Excited about it. Thank you, Todd, for your time. Really appreciate it. It's great getting to know you and hear about your advice for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.